Brother Bunford.
Mine says 4:59, so that clock is a little fast.
Where's yours? You got it?
Hey, are you guys ready? Okay, how hard did I hit this? I've had complaints I hit it too hard.
Go with that.
Just
As hard as you want. Wait a second.
Bam.
Yep, wait.
Meeting will come to order. Yes.
Could I ask you to keep the staff sign the page so that we can capture?
Yes, I will ask that. Our county clerk is asking that even staff go ahead and sign the roll so that we have record of who attended. So if you haven't signed that, please make sure that you do. Also make sure that your microphones have the green light if you want to turn those on. Yours is Carl. Okay. All right, we welcome you to the Cache County Council meeting. Today's February 9th, 2021. And we will have our opening by Councilmember Nolan Gunnell.
Thank you. Tonight I have chosen to do my opening comments in the form of a prayer, so I'll do that now. Our Father in heaven, we come before Thee on this evening as we give thanks for the opportunity of assembling in this free country. We're grateful for the policies and the ordinances which we have, which allow us to do this, and the government which allows us to come and do these in the right manner. We appreciate those citizens who come and participate in this way of democracy. We're grateful for this country, and we pray that it remain free. We pray for those men and women who serve and protect our freedoms, so that they would be protected in their endeavors. This we ask and give thanks for in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Now, if you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nolan. Okay, our first item of business is to approve the agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So
I'll
moved.
make a motion. Oh, go
You want a second?
ahead. I'll second.
Okay, it's been
I want
moved.
you to know I've been waiting for 2 years to make a motion.
You gotta be quicker than
That's
that.
right. No, I'll second.
You muzzled him.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously.
We'll just let Carl make the motions the rest of the day. Get back in practice.
Okay, the next item of business is review and approval of the minutes. I'll let the council know that I spoke with Justin at the clerk's office, and we'd appreciate if we could hold those minutes. He's got some adjustments to do to those. But that is your decision, since I can't make motions, as Carl mentioned. So I'll entertain a motion on the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes with the corrections.
Okay, he hasn't made them yet. Would we prefer that we hold them and do them next week?
Whatever.
Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
I move that we wait and approve the minutes next week with corrections made.
okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we hold on to these minutes until our following meeting where we'll approve them at that time. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there any follow-up on our minutes?
Madam Chair, I could say, the reason that we're doing that is that we've been going through some iterations. Obviously, we've had some staffing changes. We want to make sure that we do it right. We're going to be working with you to make sure that we get it the way that council wants. And we want to be in full compliance with state, local ordinances. And we want it to be up to date and modern so that it's something unique among local governments that people can automatically pull open YouTube and get directly where they are on the agenda.
Just appreciate that, and I should have mentioned that it wasn't that it was full of mistakes, it was just trying to work out the best format, and that, thank you for that clarification. Okay, next item.
Hang on, so is the YouTube gonna be a part of the minutes from now on?
Yeah, we are going to be hyperlinking each section so that you can pull open the minutes and click on a link, and it will automatically take you to the video at that point in time.
Which is a great idea and will be really helpful, so, okay. We'll go now to the report of our county executive, David Zick.
All right, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have a couple of items for you this evening. First of all is appointments. There are 3 appointments before you tonight. We need to reappoint 3 members of the Bear River Board of Health, and those will all be to a 3-year term. The 3 incumbents in those seats are Cheryl Atwood of Logan, James Swink, our county attorney, and Sarah Sinclair. So I submit those 3 to the council for your advice and consent.
I move approval for those appointments.
Second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve those appointments to the Bear River Board of Health. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
All right, thank you, Madam Chairwoman and council. The next item I have is the financial reports. I have signed the expense report warrant register and handed it over to you for your approval.
We don't have to take any action.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, thanks.
I just sign it.
And the last thing I have for you in my section of the agenda tonight is you asked me to discuss my 2021 goals, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I'll just take a few minutes to talk about some of the things I'll be working on this year. First of all, I just want to once again thank the voters for giving me this opportunity, and I consider it an honor to serve the citizens of Cache County. I also want to thank the rest of the elected officials here in this room and throughout the county for their service, and look forward to working together with all of you. I have, obviously, being new in this position, I have a lot to learn and a lot to get up to speed on as far as county operations and a number of projects that are already underway. But I'll just go through, in general, a few of the priority areas that I plan to work on. My number 1 priority, of course, is public safety. I feel like the number 1 responsibility of government is to make sure people are safe. And obviously, we have several things that we do in relation to public safety, including law enforcement, prosecution, our county fire department. We have, in our county fire department especially, a brand new service that we are providing as of the 1st of this year, and that's ambulance service for the south end of the valley. So when it comes to public safety, that right now is my number 1 priority, to work with our fire chief and to make sure that that service rolls out smoothly, and that we not only maintain the level of service, but even improve the level of service. And I talked to Chief Hammer today, and I'm impressed with what they're doing so far. I think they're doing a great job. In addition to public safety, I would like to work on transportation. In talking to our voters around the valley, our citizens, that is something that is being very heavily impacted by the rapid growth we're seeing, and something that we need to stay ahead of. So I plan to work with the Cache County Council of Governments and the Cache Metropolitan Planning Organization to ensure we're doing everything we can to get our road projects done as quickly as possible. I think we're in a really good situation right now with some of the economics at play. We may be able to get some projects done for a lot less money. So that's something I'll be working with them on and keeping you up to date on. My 3rd priority is economic development. This has been a priority of mine for several years that I've been working on before coming to this position. And I appreciate this council's support in that effort in adopting a strategic economic development plan last year and in hiring a county economic development director. I plan to work with him and to help him to get going on many of the priorities in that strategic plan and to make sure that we have a strong and varied economy here as we do now and in the future. So those would be the top three. Another thing I would like to work on is preservation of our open spaces here in the valley. As I mentioned, the rapid growth that we've been experiencing is something that's affecting our open spaces. I was part of a group that about a year and a half ago we started working on an effort to identify and preserve critical lands here in the valley, and that group included some of our local elected officials, mayors, some of our state legislators, past and current, and it was really kind of a brainstorming group initially, but unfortunately because of the pandemic, that group was put on hold. But we're planning to get started again with some discussions and do some brainstorming. I'd also like to work with our Development Services Department and the process they're going through to update our general plan to make sure that the preservation of open space and farms and water is something that is addressed in that plan. And then the fifth of my priorities that I'll mention tonight is working on our county organization internally. And I plan to work with every department to identify ways that we can improve service, that we can improve efficiency, that we can do things better. And that's actually something I find fun. I guess maybe I'm a little bit of a policy wonk, but I like improving the service to our customers especially. That's something that I guess I'll just say sometimes I hate government. And I think we've all had those experiences where we have an interaction with a government agency and we think they could do better. They should do better. They should care more about the people they're serving. And that's what I want to make sure. I want to make sure that our team here thinks that way and realizes that our mission is to make the lives better of our citizens, and that we're doing everything we can to make their lives better. So I plan to work with each of our department heads and our staff to see what we can do to improve. And that will include a number of ongoing projects and existing projects. For example, this morning we had a meeting at the fairgrounds and we talked about the acquisition of the armory. And that's something that I think will improve our level of service to our citizens, allow us to provide for more services and amenities at the fairgrounds. And I think it'll be a good project. So that's something that's already underway, but I intend to see that through. And I think we'll see a number of projects coming out of the different departments, and I recognize that half a dozen of those are led by elected officials, and I look forward to working with all of them. I've had a number of conversations with them already about how we can support them in improving their operations and their service to the public. So thank you for the opportunity tonight. That's a brief summary, but the list probably is pages long already, but I'll keep you apprised as we move forward with those. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. And we'll be hearing council member goals toward the end of the meeting. So we didn't just put you on the spot. We're all kind of on the spot with that. Okay. Move down to, we don't have items of special interest, so department committee reports. An update of our Cache County General Plan. Development Services Office. Chris, would that be you?
That is me. And with your agreement, we'd like to come back about once a month and share with you where we're at. So you're in the loop. If people have questions, you know what's going on. And we feel like we're having some good engagement with our council. I'm going to pull this up on our screen. Have you all been to the Imagine Cache website yet? If you haven't, I'm going to take you through a couple things. And I'll give you an option here.
One is go watch the videos first.
want to watch, I was gonna ask, do you want to watch, I'll let you watch one, but not three. I feel like I'm talking to my kids. I'll watch one, but not three. Hey, Grandma. Yeah. There we go. So just as an overview, just quickly, the Imagine Cache is kind of how we branded the general plan process because it isn't just our general plan. We're kind of doing something a little unique. We're hitting 4 long-range documents with this set of plans. And so we're doing the general plan, which is kind of the low-hanging fruit. That's the easy part. But we're also looking at an urban and rural area assessment. We're trying to figure out where it makes sense for growth to happen in the county. So we can start working with the communities to have a better balance of where growth is going to occur. Tied to that is our cost of service plan. That's going to be figuring out what makes sense from a cost perspective for roads, for services. And it's broader than just the roads. We've asked our consultant to look at anything to do with culinary water, to do with sewer, to do with electrical, to do with any service type of use, even our fire and EMS type groups. So we're trying to get a very broad picture there. And remember, with the general plan, some of these, we are keeping it kind of 30,000 foot level. And then as we move down into some of the implementation, we'll get to the detail. After all these pieces come together, we're going to have the regional collaboration plan, which means we're going to be reaching out to a lot of the communities and saying, how do we work together? How can we make a plan so we're more efficient with our resources, more efficient with our process, so we have better communication? So we'll be building those pieces there. So this points to all those. If you go to imaginecache.com and you scroll down, the first thing you're going to see is our number one, our first place in the video competition. Has everyone watched that? First of all, just show of hands.
It's good.
I would recommend watching the first one. Is that all right? You okay with that?
There are 13,
There were 13 submittals.
if I remember
Yep.
total. They're all pretty dang cool.
They were all I'd recommend watching them all, just kind of, if you have a minute here and there. But let's watch the first one. You can get a good idea of what came in. This was the best of what we saw. Oh, do we have audio? I should have checked that.
Pause it. Can you lean up on your audio and no feedback?
You were doing it so well last time. What's your secret?
Very funny.
What about 30?
Well, it's not doing that. All right.
Imagine a place that has everything. A place where rugged meets Brazil. Altitude with attitude, with golden sunsets and radiant almost as bright as the friendliest people you will ever meet. Imagine somewhere that makes you feel alive, with adventure around every corner, somewhere you will make friends for life. Imagine a leading research university spawning brains and brawn, in a simple belief that hard work and innovation means something in a complex world. Open landscape, beautiful neighborhoods, and vast wilderness right out your back door. Imagine 1,500 acres of you can achieve anything here. Somewhere you don't need to make plans for the best adventures are the ones yet to discover. Imagine a place that has it all. Why imagine? Welcome to Cache Valley, Utah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I think so. I think the person, I think it's Sarah, put this together, Sarah Rasmussen. I'm pretty sure she's a grad student up at the university in the video. I'm not sure what the degree is, but very well done. There were 2 or 3 others that, again, they got the top votes that we're a good reflection and a good opportunity for people to come to our website and participate in some of the things there for gathering information from our citizens. Again, I'll encourage you to go check those out. But when you come to this site, you can click on a number of things. You just scroll through. Really what you're going to want to look at, that we want you to look at, is this Get Involved option. So if you go to View Page, it's going to open up some of these things we want you to look at with the County Vision Questionnaire, and then there's also kind of a visual preference survey, right next to that. It doesn't take very long to fill those out, 5 or 10 minutes. Click through those and enter those. If you can even just do one of those, it would help quite a bit. You'll notice also when you're in here, those are the questionnaires. There's also a map. And you can identify things that you think are, what do we have it as? Green are places you love the most, blue are places that present opportunities for change, and orange are places that need the most. You fill in the blank. So if we go to the map, you can see what people have already been inputting into the site and what people think is important, what people like or don't like. And that's probably a neat thing for you to look at as council members to see what's going on in the county and this feedback. Another great feedback opportunity is you can directly text message the website. Oops, let's scroll back up here. So if I go to ideas under this other tab, you can see all the comments that people have posted. Right now there are, let's click in there, I think 113 the last I looked, just a minute before I came. So you can read through all these ideas that people have posted. Just they can text right in from their phone. So it's really simple, not very many difficulties in putting their thoughts out there. But you can read through that and see what kind of consensus there is across folks' input. The other piece I'm going to point you to, there's the ask a question piece, and I won't get into that. We're also working with some different groups, with our stakeholders, with our steering committee, and our consultant. We have kind of a mural, is the software that it's called, where you can get on and we have a discussion about all the input that's been received so far, and we can give you an update on that next time once that concludes, about all the comments that have been received. So we've met with our steering committee to do this, and we talk about these items on the map and items that they see that are critical issues that we may have missed. So like when Mr. Zook is talking about the follow-up with the general plan and making sure those issues with water and open space are addressed, those are some of those pieces that we talk about. For example, tomorrow we have our planners breakfast we have once a month. We're inviting that group to participate in that same process and add some more comments. So we'll continue to do that. The biggest thing I'll say is we are wrapping this up in the next week. So February 14th is our last date that we're going to be actively pursuing public comment. That public comment's been open for a number of months, and you just can't let that drag on. Of course, we'll still accept public comment, but the big push will be done so we can start moving on to next parts of this plan and analysis. Something else I want to show you, just kind of on the, well, never mind, I'm not going to show you that part. I'll just say when we did the video, we saw a big spike in participation because there's people that are getting on, they want to vote for their family members or whoever it is. We want to continue to drum up that support. So whoever your contacts might be, whether it's with family, friends, different organizations you're a part of, please encourage them to participate through the next week. It's a very low bar for participation. We really need to have more input there. We want to feel comfortable that when this plan is put together, it's fairly representative of who's out there. It'll give us a better opportunity to implement code pieces, any ordinance pieces, anything else as we move forward. So that's my general update for you. If you have questions, I'm happy to address them now, or you can call me on the side. We have been working with Taylor Jensen. He was our countywide planner. He's since moved back to Eagle Mountain, or will be moving down there. So we've lost him, but we do have a replacement already in store, and she'll start on the 16th, just after President's Day. So her name's Lauren. She'll be starting soon, and I'll introduce her when she comes on and let you get to know her. But she'll take the lead there, and we'll try not to, I joke a little bit that it's sink or swim, but I think she'll come up to speed very quickly and be a great asset to us. Any questions tonight, or you guys good? All right, that's the update.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And that's exciting to see the public participation and the video that was put together. That's really great. That was a really smart idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, before I go on to the next item, I just want to remind the members of the audience, if you haven't signed in over here on the edge of this table, to please do so. We try to keep track of who is here, and especially if you're going to make any public comments. So make sure that you sign it before you leave. The next item is our public hearing on ordinance 2021-05, which amends our alcohol code. And I've asked Attorney John Luthi if he would give a short presentation before we open that hearing, just to give a little description of what it does.
Thanks. I'll try to be brief because I think you've heard about this a number of times, but for the sake of the public who may not have, the state alcohol code provides a number of different alcohol licenses that individuals can obtain from the state, but to get any of them, they have to have consent from the county, or if we were in a municipality, from the municipality. The ordinance that we have prepared and that you're considering would allow the county to give consent for a winery manufacturing license, but not other of the alcohol licenses and permits available through the state. The ordinance sets up a framework for the county to administer that in terms of doing essentially some background checking and things of folks that would apply for the license. It also, the ordinance updates the code in some other areas. In basically, our current alcohol code has been there since the 70s and 80s and just plain needs some updating. And so there's some updates to bring our language current with the state code, and then allow for a winery manufacturing consent for a winery manufacturing license and an administrative structure for that. I've been made aware here this evening from the Mount Naomi Farms folks that attorneys that they've spoken with who have experience in helping people get state licenses have reviewed this draft ordinance and identified some concerns just in terms of how that administrative structure would work with the reality of how the state handles this kind of licensing. And in talking with them, it sounds like it would, even if you're, after you have your own discussion or wanting to move in this direction, that I probably ought to talk with that attorney and see what the concerns are and perhaps recommend some tweaks to what we've done to make sure that if you pass this, that it does work in a seamless way with the state and not create problems either for the county or for applicants because we just aren't matching it up against the state system quite like we should. Is that good?
Yes, thank you, John. We appreciate that very much. So we'll open the public hearing. If you would like to speak about this, please come to the podium and state your name. Please make your remarks brief. And if somebody has pretty much virtually said what you've said, let's not duplicate comments, and make your remarks to us, to the council, rather than to the audience.
Hi, my name's Ben Keaty. Not used to getting up and speaking, so but I live on the north side of Paradise in the unincorporated area. Right now, got some acreage that is leased to a farmer. He takes care of it, and he gives me 12 bales of hay a year per acre. I use that for my farm animals. If I wanted to, I could get some money, but it's not a lot. Barely takes care of taxes and whatnot. So I think, well, what can I do to make money, right? I mean, money is pretty much what makes the world go round. Anybody that looks at the Brown in this valley knows I subdivide it and sell it. 50,000 an acre or so. I don't know what it's going for, but I can look it up. It beats 12 bales. Of course, with that, right now I care about things like water rights. I sell it. I don't care about water rights. I'm one less person fighting for that type of stuff. There's a ripple effect. And anybody that looks around knows it's just going to housing. Another option, though, would be a cidery. Throw up some more trees. I've already got about 160 small apple trees. Throw up some more trees, and of course, I'm not going to be able to maintain that by myself. I'll need to hire some people. I'll still care about water rights, obviously. But it's got to be one way or the other, and I think I can represent a lot of people. Anybody that drives on the south side of the valley can say, wow, where'd this subdivision come up in the last month? So that's just, I don't know that it's going to make much of a difference, but I just want to throw that out there because I mean, you got a 4-story hotel here. I know that's in Logan, but you got apartment complexes on your way out to Paradise. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Keaty.
My name's Keith Mickle. As many of you know, we farm on the north side, and to me, this ordinance is about agriculture 100%. That's all this is about, is preserving agriculture. That's the only reason we've brought this to the county ever, was to say we need a way to produce something more valuable on our farm, because our hay and wheat is losing to Visionary Homes and all the other developers and this year I would have thought we'd have a reprieve, but we've had gasoline poured on it, and the development pressure on our farm has gone ballistic. And that's part of why it was so hard for me to talk to John tonight, and the pain of, you know, it's been 2.5 years of trying to figure out how to get an ordinance in the county that could help preserve my farm. And that ordinance is very close, and it just needs a bit more tweaking. And I also wanted it to pass tonight, I really did. But I want an ordinance that is functional, that makes it so the county and we, the farmers, are partners in the fact that we're going to be bringing tax revenue to this county. We're going to be model citizens to this county. But, you know, I want to feel like I'm not at odds with my government on it. I want to feel like, you know, that we are cooperative citizens in a common venture of self-determination. And that's what I'd like to see this ordinance be, and I pray that there'll be some impetus put on this, that time is starting to run short for farms like mine. We need the ordinance soon, and I mean soon, because it will take us years to become profitable, to get a new business up and running and make it profitable, to then be able to hold on to what we have. And that, my window is getting so small so quick, and I just would please beg you to do this.
Thank you, Keith. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this?
Good evening. My name is Paul Stewart. I live in Hyde Park. I'm an aerospace executive, and we live in Hyde Park. My wife, Sunny, and I, we've been here for about 5 or 6 years, and we love this valley very much. I've been a key supporter, and I've been coming to this valley to SmallSat for 15 years, and I've seen the valley grow and what it can become, and an economic impact of the small satellite community and aerospace here in this area is very, very important, I believe. And I see this as an economic impact. This year, SmallSat was virtual, and I'm working from home and trying to keep things going. But I see this as a huge economic impact and positive money flow for the county. And I wish that that could continue. There's a lot of aerospace people like myself. Each summer we attract 4,000. This year virtually we had 8,000 people come, all online.
next year, we hope to have a lot more. So I'd like to see this passed because I think that that could benefit all of us in a very positive way economically for all the businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Yes, my name is Max Barfus, and my wife is Bridget Ballard. She's the sole inheritor of a Centennial Farm in Cass Junction, about 700 acres. We're in the exploratory phases of looking at doing a winery, so this resolution initially looks fine. I'll take the advisement of people who are looking into it a little bit further down the chain. So if they say there are specific problems with the implementation of it, I'd be welcome to exploring it further, but initially it looked decent, so I would make the recommendation that at least this or one like it pass soon. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Barfus.
I'll be brief. I'm Jamie Andrus, the President and CEO of the Cache Valley Chamber of Commerce. And I sent all of you an email, and to be honest, it's the exact email that I sent a year ago. Brenda and the Vineyards, beautiful, beautiful addition to our valley, and I just wanted to point out that agritourism is something that we've been working for and working towards, and there are wineries throughout the state and other counties, and I think for many reasons, it would be great for our county. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Hey, my name is Lori Spears. I also live in the unincorporated area of Paradise. Ben is actually my husband, and you may remember an email that I sent the council in early 2020 about hard cider. I'm a scientist by day. That's what I do during the job, so I like data. I'm not going to go into a lot of data, but I do want to share just one thing. So a professor at USU Extension conducted a statewide needs assessment, and he identified the top 10 critical issues for each county. And so I'm just going to list off a few of them that pertain to Cache County, and this is available on the USU Extension site. Assist farmers in agricultural production and profitability, preserving agricultural farmland, and strengthening the local food system was on that top 10 list. Some of the others that aren't related are, preserving air quality or water quality, etc. So wine manufacturing creates an opportunity to sustain our farms, improve profitability, but it also creates, helps to strengthen urban ties to agriculture, which I think is also really important. And so having a winery, a cidery, allows my family, my friends, other tourists to visit some of these sites in Cache Valley, and I think that would be really helpful. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori. Is there anyone else? Oh. Thanks for being ready to get into motion.
Hello, my name is Stephen Keaty. I am Staff Sergeant, active duty in the United States Air Force. I grew up in Logan. I currently live in Logan. I'd like to stand here and express my support for this ordinance. I believe agritourism is an absolutely an incredible point. Agritourism, people coming to Cache Valley and subsequently coming into our great city to explore, what else they could see and spend money, which is great for us. Tax revenue, just like Mr. David Zook said, our counter executive here, he stated that one of his goals here in 2021 is to increase revenue, and I believe this is going to do nothing but that. So I just wanted to stand here and express my support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keaty. Anybody else?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, for those of you interested in this, we will have it on our agenda farther down. We can be discussing it, and you're welcome to stay and listen to that discussion. We will now move to pending action, ordinance 2021-04, which repeals a number of sections of county code relating to county records and changes kind of our grandma process, the Government Records and Management Act process. Nothing really about my grandma or yours. Jess, do you want to speak to that?
Thank you, council members, for allowing me to come and speak to this ordinance today. My office is excited. We've enrolled ourselves into a pilot program that will be taking our grammar requests online. So people will actually be able to go online to our website and enter in their information, the request, and that will send the request to my staff. They can then interact through the portal. If something will cost them money, we can actually bill them through the portal or send them how much it's going to cost and say, this will be the cost of the grammar request. Are you still interested? And it allows them to interact with us through the portal as well. Now, this creates a little bit of friction with this ordinance. There are two sections. One is where it says it's done through email. Email is not the best way to run a grammar request. It's one way to run the grammar request, but we believe that doing it through a portal will keep all of our grammar requests in one area, and each one is specific, and we only interact with the individual through that portal, which keeps all interactions documented, and all of the grammar requests are right there compiled already. We don't have to do any additional documentation. And so if you look at, and of course I closed it, 1104. On page 2, it says that on page 2 in section B, it says that it's very specific and says that it has to be emailed. If we could keep that a little bit more vague and say electronically submitted, requests shall be submitted through the clerk auditor's website or web page, something like that. That gives us a little bit more leniency. As of right now, I think the sheriff's office could probably still use the email, but we would like to pilot this, and then if it's successful, we can include the sheriff's office in this as well. So just a little bit of complications for this ordinance. Not too bad, though. I think if you keep it vague, it gives us a little bit of wiggle room to do this pilot.
How are you going to work that if people come in person or actually physically mail their request in?
Physically, we just create one for them. So I don't know the numbers behind that, John, of people mailing them, physical mailing, but I doubt that it's very significant compared to the electronic means.
But you do have people that do not use email. You need to give them an opportunity to be able to submit that.
Correct, yeah. Our primary focus will be those who do use email, though, and of course allowing everyone the opportunity to submit it, but in the current era, I would say, is about 99% of the people. So I don't want to get too focused on the people who don't use it, or else we lose focus on the 99 who do use the systems. But you are correct. I don't want to demean the people who don't use email or electronic means.
Just wanted to make sure that that opportunity to come and ask in person or to send it through the mail, the regular mail, is preserved. And I believe it is in this ordinance, does it not, John?
Yeah.
That's how I read it. Okay.
Oh, so
First-class mail, hand delivery, or electronically
yeah,
on B.
correct. So both those same options would exist. We're okay with those first ones. And then The electronic would just be through the portal, through the cash website, because it wouldn't be through email.
We just need to make a motion to amend the ordinance to reflect what Jess is saying.
So very, very small tweak.
Council, I'll entertain that motion to change that wording if the council so desires.
Well,
Changing it to.
I'm on a roll for motions here. I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2021-04, an ordinance of the Cache County Council repealing and amending county code sections, and there are several of them, relating to county records.
Do you want to change any of the wording in your motion, or you just want to approve it as
Well, I
we
think,
received?
I think it says that people can still submit in writing or in person, and so.
It does, but then it specifically says electronically submitted requests shall be sent to grandma@cachecounty.org. And our clerk would like to change that to be electronically submitted through a portal on the clerk's website. Correct?
Correct. In 2 weeks, we will have the developer here, and they've estimated that it will only take them less than a week to set that up for us.
I'll amend my motion to include that language.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been.
Yeah, I'd like to know it too.
It was English.
It was changing on B, electronically submitted to a portal on the clerk's
Through the portal.
website, through a portal on the clerk's website.
You're a pretty good writer if you can get that down.
Yeah, you are.
Is there any further discussion on this item?
So we're removing completely grandma@cachecounty.org?
Yes, we're changing that sentence. We're changing electronically submitted requests must be sent to grandma@cachecounty.org to electronically submitted requests sent or through the portal at the clerk's website. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve this ordinance with the amended language. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? That passes unanimously.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move to item number 12, initial proposals for consideration of action. Ordinance 2021-05, which is the ordinance amending chapters of our code relating to alcoholic beverages, allowing for the winery. Council, what are your thoughts?
Is there any need, we talked about, John talked a little bit about the need to make a tweak or two in some of the language. Is that something that we need to perhaps see the final version of first before we?
I would like to see the final version
So would
before I
I.
even debate it, to be honest with you.
Will that have to come back for another public hearing, or can we submit amended language?
So, let me give just a little bit more background. The ordinance that you have, I prepared based on, I went through all of the counties in the state whose code is online to see if there's one that already had a scheme in place that looked like it would work for us. Wasatch County did. This is modeled very closely to the Wasatch County ordinance. And so I assumed, because Wasatch County has some wineries and had a very comprehensive ordinance, that would be good. Mr. Mickle has let me know that the attorneys that he's spoken with that do this sort of thing have identified some concerns. And so I think that I ought to talk with those attorneys, see if I agree with those concerns. Some of the ones that he raised, I feel like, yeah, we may need to tweak some things there. But the basic idea isn't going to change significantly, I don't believe. I do think that I ought to come back and tell you what changes, if any, I'm recommending. But as Mr. Borup indicated, I think at the last council meeting, that really before we put too much more effort into this. There probably ought to be some discussion and an indication of, is the county wanting to head in the direction of allowing winery manufacturing licenses? If it is, then I ought to dig in with that other attorney and we make the tweaks that need to be made so that this is workable. If the county has a discussion and is not wanting to head in the direction of winery manufacturing licenses, I'd be happy not to need to do further work on tweaking it. It just wouldn't be as good a use of resources. So I'd encourage you to have a discussion tonight on the basic idea of, are we headed toward the county giving consent for winery manufacturing licenses? I don't recommend that you pass this ordinance tonight in light of the fact that one of the principal proponents of it is suggesting that we want to make some tweaks before you pass them.
So what you're saying is we have the discussion tonight, pretending that this language is passable. Because you just need to make those tweaks to make sure that we make it administratively easy to get a license from the DABC and from Cache County. So that's, instead of foregoing all that, we should have the discussion so that you know whether to write it or not.
Correct, and I don't recommend that you take a formal vote tonight, because that could be confusing to folks as to whether the ordinance passed or not, but I think if you have a discussion, we'll all be able to get some indication of whether to proceed.
John, you need to turn your mic on.
I think that we probably could then, at the end of our discussion, we could probably postpone it definitely till the next meeting. And then whatever changes we can amend at that meeting, we don't have to have another public hearing.
Yeah, this is
Am I
just
right?
on for initial proposal, so.
And in fact, this part, this ordinance, you technically don't have to have a public hearing. I think it's wise of you that you have had one, and if it turns out that the tweaks that we need to make are significant, then I'll let you know if I think you ought to have another hearing. It's the part that comes later that is the land use part of implementing this that then you will be required. Well, the planning commission will be required to have a public hearing.
Thank you, John.
Well, I don't know how everybody else feels, but based on the overwhelming number of emails in support of and the comments from the public who've been here, and as I've looked into this and thought about it and pondered over the whole thing, I think I'm generally in favor of opening up our agricultural opportunities.
I'm very supportive of this idea, and I have not heard one person say negative or that they didn't want it. Everything has been a positive, and I've tried to reach out to different sections to try to see if there's anybody out there who felt differently, because I got so many positives, but I haven't heard any. And I think it could really be a great thing for our valley, and especially in our desire to preserve agriculture. I think this is a really great way to do that, and would like to see us move forward with it.
If I may, I'd like to point out two things that I'd like a little more clarification on it. Talks about, and I know that you talked about the land use comes later, but as we look in this, there's two sections in there that I'd like to have some clarity to. It's 10 acres. Talks about the sheriff going to the premise and inspecting, but it also talks on that place that it is separated so that children don't get to the wine and everything else. I just want to see and know that if it's 10 acres, how do we do that so that the person has a place that the wine is done, that they have people coming and staying? What I'm looking at is, are we creating agritourism, but yet we're creating 2 houses on 10 acres, so we've almost created an RU5? Does that make sense? And I'm trying to understand that, because if the farmer has his house and he has 10 acres, but yet he's got to have a separate place for people to come and stay, so that the sheriff can drop in at any time according to this ordinance and see it, but also see that the children are not accessing that wine. How congested have we now created a county with 10 acres yet with 2 places, and I've just created an RU5? Does that make sense to you guys? There's,
I didn't know we were talking about overnight accommodation.
I think that's the purpose of this is heading to, that if you read the emails, many people are talking about that, are they not?
That's a whole different issue. I mean, it's the same as opening an inn or a hotel or anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as, yeah, it drives tourism, it drives overnight accommodations. Maybe at some point you can have a stay on site thing, but I think we addressed that in the land use piece.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And maybe clarify, but I don't believe that, and you mentioned this, that the alcohol ordinance itself doesn't talk about separate accommodations.
No, but it does bring out 2 points of separating that from the children.
Yes.
And then having a premise, so I want to know what that premise is or how you separate that. Is that a separate building?
I would need to go back and look at the language, but I would view that there may be a separate building for the wine tasting, and that they are not going to be doing the wine manufacturing in the home. So you may have a home on the premises, but then the facilities for wine manufacturing and wine tasting that would not be in whatever home might be on that same parcel. And then the other thing that I wanted to just remind you is that we looked at having the land use, having this qualify as an ag tourism use, and then there were enough complications with that the proposal is for this to be its own new type of land use, winery manufacturing, that would then be allowed in the A10 with some stipulations on that. And it's the ag tourism that allows for additional accommodation on site. So this wouldn't, although in the broader colloquial sense, it's agritourism, but in terms of how the code works, this wouldn't be under ag tourism. It would be under its own land use of winery manufacturing, which wouldn't open the door for additional accommodation on site. If that makes sense.
That's how I understood it was being looked at, and never as any kind of an overnight type of accommodation.
Which there could have been if we'd have put this under agritourism, but we're putting this under its own winery manufacturing. That's the proposal.
Okay, I understand that, but I still have those questions. There was another person who emailed me who had a question about, on page 5, item 1B, where we have the word quiet in there.
I asked you about that.
Yeah, that was brought to my attention earlier today, and again, I think that came in because it's in the Wasatch County version, and the chair has asked me to think about that, and since it's not recommended to pass tonight, we'll take some time to either define quiet or take that out or come back with a recommendation.
I mean, I understand what they're talking about, if it's loud music or staying or whatever, but some scope on that.
And I will say that Wasatch County has basically this ordinance, but they allow any state alcohol license or permit the county will consent to if you follow this. And so there are some other licenses and permits where quietness would come more into play than wine manufacturing and wine tasting. So we'll look at that and come back with a suggestion.
So as this is allowed within the agriculture zone, if this passes, this quietness, then basically they would they then be getting conditional use permits to run that operation? Or if I would sense that they would be able, it would be allowed within the agriculture zone, right? So then that is the sights, sounds, and smells of agriculture, right? So any other uses come in there, that would be part of that. Now, I don't know what the sounds or the quietness, of a winery. I think it's just a matter of I will say one thing, this is a new culture of agriculture within this valley. You know, it's new. And I'm not saying new is bad. You know, I think that, and I know Mr. Mickle mentioned about survival within agriculture and everything. And I think there's a lot of ways to survive in agriculture. It's just that this here is another option for possibly if your land can be optimized with the kind of soils and be able to do that and to raise that, you know, that quality of berries and that can be used for those things, and then you can promote it as such. I don't see any problem with that. I don't think, from what I read in this, it doesn't allow, it isn't where it's going to be just this great big festive party. I mean, they then still, any operation would still have to go through planning and zoning for any kind of changes in new business. What they're going to really do is just what aspects of the wine tasting are you going to promote within that area. I think that a lot of it's really, it's quite common sense to me. I don't want to restrict, you know, just one thing. I don't think it's something to get out of hand, having a wine factory or wine facility. I don't think it'll get out of hand whatsoever. I think it's just a promotion of what crops can be raised on these fertile soils. So I know in California, they're tearing homes down in some places to put them into wineries. Napa Valley. Some homes have been purchased and torn down and then replaced with them because of the values that could be added to an agriculture product. So.
Well stated.
Well, I'm one that wants to put a comment to the caution on this because there's a possibility that raising grapes in the valley on agricultural land will possibly make it more profitable than raising wheat. I'm one that looks ahead and says, okay, if this is something that we as a county residents feel that we want to become involved in, then we also got to remember, not related to this, but also related to agricultural land, is we've got to come up with a place where we can start to raise medical marijuana. That's something that's right around the corner. And we already have, hemp being raised for medicinal purposes as well. So I can visualize in the future that if we say, okay, it's all right in Cache County that we raise wine and we press the grapes and make the finished product and everybody gets to go out there and taste it. That becomes an interesting culture that we haven't had in Cache County. What's it gonna do as we proceed this way? Right around the corner is the next request will be if we can do some small breweries like you see in Las Vegas and some of these other places where you're able to raise some barley and some hops, make a formula and make some brew out of it, and then have everybody come and sample the different beers and ales and all that we can do. That's just around the corner. I mean, you can start to see how we're accepting and moving forth into these type of things. I would suggest that it's probably not really in the best interest of the citizenship, but that's what they want, and free agency has a part to play in this. I'm really, really concerned. We had a comment in council meeting here a few weeks ago that if we're against this, then we're just limiting that. We're saying we don't want anybody in Cache Valley to be able to have a drink. Well, I'm about as naive as it comes with drinking, and so I felt an obligation that I should find a little bit about how easy or how hard it is to be able to buy wine in Cache Valley and be able to buy ale and gin and all these other things. And so for the very first time in my life, I went down to the state liquor store. Never been in there before. Had to look it up on a map to see Well, actually, yeah, that's how naive I am out in College Ward. We just milk cows and work hard. But I went in there and I showed them my driver's license, and whether you admit it or not, I looked a little older than 21, but they said, no, let's see your license. And, so, and they admitted me, was really kind, and I said, okay, I'm 21, what can I buy in here? And the little gal that was there, she says, well, Mr. Zealous, you can buy anything you want. And I said, well, how much of it can I buy? Can I buy a case? Can I buy a wagon load? What can I buy? Anything that you can pay for, you can have. And so it became evident to me that the comment that you can't buy a drink in Cache Valley is wrong. I'm not really talking about that in this here wine business, but to satisfy my curiosity, I wanted to know if we are that restrictive here in Cache Valley as to whether or not that's a possibility, and I found that you can get anything you want. The other thing you hear is, well, you can't go to a restaurant and get a drink. Well, that's maybe true at some restaurants. There are restaurants in Cache Valley that if you want to patronage them, you can get a drink at your meal. And so people don't like us, but I think most of it's perception, because I got talking to a couple other people that are out of state, and they said, no, you can't buy beer in Cache Valley on Sunday, but there's a lot of other states in America that you can't buy beer on Sunday, and so we're not unique. We probably are a little more restrictive on what we can do, and that's probably where I'm coming from, as I see the restriction as being good. Most of the people here are talking about the restriction being bad. But I mean, I can accept the will of the people if that's what they want, but I just lay caution to the wind that you can see as we are going forth with this, that we are moving our way to the way the world is, and I'm not sure I want to be involved that much in that portion of the world. I mean, if you have had alcoholism in your family, which I have, it is not a very nice thing to be involved in. We just had Carol Warner in here, spoke with us for an hour and a half, about the sadness of children being raised in those type of homes and how it causes serious mental challenges for them the rest of their life. So maybe I'm coming across as being way too moral on this, but I'm just saying, hey, is this where we're headed? Is this what we want? Because those things will happen. I mean, we're going to talk about marijuana in a couple of weeks, and we have got to decide where we're going to allow marijuana because we're being forced upon it from the state. So those farmers that are going to raise grapes can also have an opportunity to raise marijuana on their acreage if they want. And it'll go on and on and on. But anyway, I just put a caution to this. Are we sure this is what we want to do? If this is what we want to do, then we should all say, okay, let's see how this works out. That's all I have to say, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Gordy. Anybody else? David?
Yeah, I just want to add to what Councilmember Zillis said. I thought a lot about this myself, and I know I don't get to vote on this body here, but there were a couple of things I heard tonight about science and data and economics, and I like Councilmember Zillis, have also experienced alcoholism in my family and seen the horrible effects it has on families. I was also thinking about the presentation we had earlier that Terrell gave to us. According to the National Institutes of Health, 10% of kids live with an alcoholic parent, and that's something that affects the things that we were talking about earlier this evening. Alcoholism is a major problem in our country. Last month, about 26% of Americans participated in binge drinking. And I think it's kind of interesting because alcohol is never really viewed in our country or in our world as a drug, but that's how I've always viewed it. I don't really see alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, or any other drug differently. I think they're all the same. Some are legal, some are not, but they're all drugs people put into their bodies to cause a certain effect, and some of those effects are negative. we have about 14 million Americans in our country who suffer from alcoholism, and most of those are men, about 9 million of them, and about close to 500,000 of them are teenagers. We have about 100,000 deaths every year in our country from alcoholism, 100,000, and most of those are men. About 70,000 men die from alcohol-related causes each year, 70,000. About 10,000 of the 100,000 deaths are from drunk driving, and about 2,000 of those deaths are college kids. I thought that was an important statistic when I was looking at that, considering that we have a great university here in our valley. So economics, that's an important thing too. That was something that's been mentioned in relation to this. So what are the economics of alcohol in our country? Well, the cost of alcoholism is about $250 billion a year. $250 billion per year is the cost. And I just share these with you because these are some things I think should be considered, and things that will affect. I know a winery is not the worst thing you could have when it comes to alcoholism. And I was thinking about this, and I think we have bars in our community. We have the alcohol, the liquor store that was mentioned. There are ways that people can get access to a lot more alcohol than they would find at a winery. But in my mind, it's all the same thing. It's a drug. It's something that has negative effects, and that affects our youth, that affects our economy, it affects everyone's lives. So those are my comments.
Thank you, David.
I think those are good points, right? Alcoholism is a serious thing. But let's look at it from a slightly different perspective. Chris, how many houses can go on 10 acres, roughly, give or take? One. No, once we zone it and it's going to go into a subdivision, what's the Landmark Home comes in and buys 10 acres, gets it rezoned, they're going to put in homes. How many homes go on 10 acres? When you can maximize it?
I'm a detailed guy, so you're asking me a hard question.
Give me a big ballpark. I'll take it. You can miss it by 1,000.
Maximum with our current zoning is 5.
But if once it gets moved into Smithfield's now going to
Eight to 10,000 square foot lots.
So usually around a third to a half acre, so.
Hundreds can go on 10 acres, right? So right now, one house on 10 acres. So if you're going to have an alcoholism problem, you got an alcoholism problem in one home. If we keep that land planted in grapes, you'll have one home with alcoholism problem. If you plant it with 500 homes, what are the chances of having an alcoholism problem in those homes? Because the alcohol is already available. I mean, these are two completely separate issues we're talking about. Having a winery isn't going to increase alcoholism. The alcoholics can go down to the state liquor store, bring it into their house, so you'd have alcohol on that property, whether it was grapes or a bunch of townhomes. The alcohol's going to be there. What we're talking about, and thank you, David, for having the keep the city city and the country country. This keeps the country country. If we don't do it, let's not pretend it's going to be a wheat field in 10 years. It's going to be a subdivision. So this is a way for us to allow the landowners to have control of their destiny besides selling out to a developer.
I think that's what I was starting with at first, because we're saying 10 acres. So I'm just trying to say, and I haven't grown grapes, so I don't know how many acres you need to make a successful wine manufacturing. But as Councilman Zillis talks about, it's just down the road. So if I'm fine with this. It's just I want to discover as we go down the road, now we've passed this, that it's 10 acres, what gets to come in on that 10 acres is the part I'm looking in this ordinance. Because each email I got says, okay, this is agritourism, and I got a lot, and they were all favorable for it, and that's great. I'm leaning that way myself, but at the same time, it was, and I think that I gathered from most people that wine is a gentleman's area that they sit and drink, and it's not a, keg fest or anything else that's going on that a lot of kids do. So it might appeal to the upper class or other elsewise, but I still just want to know in the ordinance it says it's saying 10 acres. Then we pass it, then we come to the land use, and then we say, okay, now we've got places that they, as agritourism, they get to stay there after they've tested it. And that's the only thing I'm asking is how far this goes down the road as far as 10 acres, and then if they've got a house, what other things have to come in for that winemaking to be there? Does that make sense in what I'm asking in that ordinance?
I think the question that you've got, Nolan, and I understand what you're saying, is if you say, all right, if you do in a 10-acre period, if you give them an opportunity to have a couple of places to stay over, then that disrupts our ordinance. And so what probably discussion we need to have is, are we going to allow an agritourism winery to supersede what our ordinance is? And that's a whole nother discussion, which I would say, no, it doesn't, until we change the ordinance. But as far as a winery in agriculture, they can build about any building they want in order to develop that winery. There won't be any restrictions on that. The only restriction is to keep underage people out of that area where it's possible that they could take a drink when they shouldn't be. But then when you go to what you're talking about, and that is where it says that some places to stay could be there for them to stay overnight or a couple of days or something, then that throws it into the, the other ordinances that have to be compared against it. And if we're going to allow it, then we have to change the ordinance, which can be done, but right now it wouldn't be allowed.
So all I'm saying is 10 enough?
Well,
too small.
I'm saying accommodations are a conditional use then.
I understand that. I was on planning and zoning, so.
Yeah, I know. So that's kind of like, hey, if they're wanting to add to, the basic, the winery, the testing sales winery area, then they have to come in and get a conditional use, and then they got to come back, and that's a whole nother process, and you're very aware of that. I do know that.
That's right.
That's why I'm saying, is 10 acres enough when we get down to that point? We're limiting it, this says 10 acres, does it not?
Minimum,
So
right?
10 acres, 10
this
acres of
ordinance-
grapes, a lot of grapes. You can raise a lot of pounds of grape on 10 acres. It's not like alfalfa or whatnot. It's very concentrated, and an acre will produce a lot of pounds of grapes.
Can I just comment?
Before we get too bogged down in the details, I think 10 acres is sure enough to have a winery. Maybe is it enough to have a winery and an inn? Maybe not. And then you address that in the land use code to say, okay, if you want an inn, you got up at the 20 acres or whatever.
Yeah, the alcohol ordinance, that's really what you're considering tonight, doesn't talk about any acreage. It just talks about, is the county going to allow a winery manufacturing license?
Okay.
And then the land use portion is going to be discussed and debated after that, and yeah, those questions could be raised. Chairman, if I could comment, at our early workshops on this, our office encouraged you to think about the rationale behind this, but what would you articulate as the reason why this is being allowed as opposed to other licenses or permits? And along the lines of Mr. Zillis and Mr. Zook, my understanding is, as we've gone along, is that the rationale is this promotes agriculture and agritourism. And as you do this based on that rationale, then, as was said, when someone then comes in to do a beer manufacturing license, it's going to be very hard to say no, because that would also promote agriculture in the valley. And then when someone follows that with a liquor manufacturing license to use their wheat for liquor, it will be very hard to say no, because that's the same rationale. It would allow us to use our agricultural land in new ways. By the time we're making wine and beer and breweries and liquor in the valley, when someone says, well then why can't we get a permit to be able to sell that beer and have a 3-day beer permit in the valley or up at Beaver Mountain, then it will be very hard to say no. We're making it here, we've got our hometown brands, and yet you're telling us we can't have anybody drink it here.
We might turn
Thing
into,
says on. Oh, okay, sorry.
you might turn into an Oktoberfest, you know, I've seen them on the internet and they really have a wonderful time. And those Germans, which I got a lot of blood in me, and they get right after it.
I just want to have made sure that that line of reasoning has been thought through out loud. The principle stand now, it's pretty easy to see where that principled stand leads over the next number of years. And then the culture of our agriculture and of our valley does change. And you all won't be on the council when we get to step 2 or 3 or 4 of that. But the history will propel itself, is the concern, I believe, of our office and of me personally. And having said that, I hope you can tell that, that I've worked hard to accommodate this happening despite those personal feelings.
You have.
I'd like to say, I thought this was an ordinance to approve wineries. I think, you know, and I'm thinking it's good to look ahead, but that's why we did what we did, working with you, John, was to make sure that it was specific for one thing, to allow wineries, right?
And it is.
Yeah.
But when the next people come in and say, but you did it based on agriculture, why won't you allow this? Because it's also based
Yeah,
on.
and I understand that, but I think we also, I think it's a step at a time is what I'm trying to say. And so I approve allowing the winery, but also with the fact in mind that we need to be very cautious of what's happening in the next stages of what's going to go on it. So I'm, you know, if we get, when you talk to, or if we decide, you know, we want you to pursue talking to that attorney, then I think that allowing the winery is fine.
Well, I'll say, one more thing, John, I agree, right? It could go like that, but I just think about it this way. I lived in Syracuse, Utah a long time ago, 15 years ago, and we lived out there, and it was still some fields and stuff. You drive over there now, and it's all houses, and there's a really nice new liquor store there. So, you know, we say we're not going to let this happen, we're not going to do wine, because then it could go on for beer because they have a big hops thing or something else. Or we just let it go with houses and then we'll get a new liquor store. I'd rather keep the open space and have some manufacturing than houses and a liquor store. Because that's what will happen. And that'll be out of our hands because the state will do it just like they've let us do some marijuana.
It's owned by the state of Utah down there on Fort North, so.
Yeah.
You know, after listening to the discussion of the people that shared their opinions and the opinions of the council, it appears to me, John, that we ought to go ahead and do your research with the other attorneys, because there's more favorable comments here from the council than there are negative ones, and so we haven't voted, but I can tell by their feeling that it's on its way.
I don't think we need to have a vote on that per se, but.
No, not today, but I mean, you've all commented on how you feel.
John, I want to, and David and Gordy too, I want you to know I appreciate absolutely where you're coming from, because drug abuse and alcohol abuse is a real issue. And I think Paul made some good comments to that, and I guess when I look at it, I think that to me there's a difference between some of these different things, and I guess I look at wine manufacturing and having a tasting as more of a upper class thing that I think would be less likely to get out of hand, and just, you know, the 5 ounce limit per day per person, you know, I don't see that you can go there and drink a whole bunch and get rowdy and cause problems and if you wanted to, I guess you could, run to the Maverick in Hyde Park and pick up some beer or whatever. So I do think we need to be careful, but I do think that we've got to find a way to preserve agriculture and that's equally as important in preserving the way of life that we have in this valley as well. And it is a hard decision. It's taken us a while to work on this and think about it. So I just want you to know I appreciate that insight very much. Appreciate your willingness to say it when maybe it wasn't the most popular thing to say. So thank you. David?
Economic development, it's a cruel and happy thing. And that's what makes it so tough. We promote economic development here and we bring all these people, that come for these high-tech jobs and how wonderful it is. And then all of a sudden, they do bring a lot of their culture with them. And sometimes that does clash with Cache County culture in a lot of ways. And then, and the other thing is economics in agriculture says that, we want to, basically it's not profitable to raise some crops and it is profitable to raise others. And then all of a sudden, we start looking at agriculture, we want all those open spaces, and you either work and let agriculture solve its own problem in some ways, with some innovative crops, whatever they may be. Some may even be specialty crops, which, your hemp and all the other, to me, I call them wacko crops. But the other thing, what's interesting is that when you let them kind of start dictating a lot of that for the open spaces, and then all of a sudden it says, well, maybe they can financially do that, and we can keep those spaces open. Then we turn around and the other thing that hits hard on economics is that we start saying, well, if they can't survive, then we will mandate that they keep it open. And then we start zoning them out of their profitability in other ways, so that we keep it open, and then you start jumping on private property rights. And here are some people that are very interested in just utilizing their property rights and actually maybe make something that is profitable to them. Okay? There's a lot of issue to this. I remember I saw a little show on TV called Moonshiner or something, where they give them like a dozen ingredients, and these are ingredients I sit there and wonder how the heck they're going to make moonshine out of that, and they do. And so many proof and all that stuff. They have these testers in their bib overalls and the whole bit, and but it's crazy, if we start, that may open up a door to where people can start raising, hey, I raised a raisin, I raised a whatever it may be, some certain grain, and they can use some other ingredients. I don't know, how do we micromanage this thing? No matter what, we are damned if you do, damned if you don't on this whole thing, for the mere fact that we can let economics and private property, or we can halt private property rights and let economics take it the other way and build homes or other crops. I don't know, it's a tough issue.
It is.
Everyone's talking slippery slope. I have found that whenever we look at decisions, if we err in the way of freedoms and private property, it works out better in the long run. So that's just a thought.
The other concern that I have, that I've read and observed, when you get bringing these type of business in, there's so much money involved in it. The profit in sales once it's set up, but the expense in getting it set up, usually what happens is when you have approval to this, you'll get your winery license, and you will bring all the investors from outside of Cache Valley in to help you build the more expensive part and components of the winery and the distillery and all that. So suddenly, it changes what you really wanted to do in the first place. The only concern is, I was thinking on this, and I was thinking, what happens if one of my grandsons becomes one of the very best wine tasters in Cache Valley? I'm really concerned about that. Maybe it'll happen, and if it's his choice, then that's fine too. But I'm questioning, and if the people that really want to push this, if they understand what an opportunity it will be for their family to be involved in the business. And it may be positive and it may be negative.
Gordy, it'll all come back to that day you went into the liquor store. Grandpa did.
I'm pretty sure that you'll read in the paper in the morning those quotes that I said about being the first time I went into a liquor store. That will be in the paper in the morning. And I'm scared of it because I don't feel I'm holier than anyone else, but I just said what I did.
Are you speaking on Sunday? Okay.
Hey, I'll help Gordy out. This discussion goes on much longer. I'm headed to the liquor store right after that.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, I think they said it was open until 10 o'clock.
Well, let's get on the
It'll be
stick. I
okay.
don't want to miss
He
anything.
knows way too much about the liquor store. Well, if you get in the paper, you owe us donuts. Remember it, that's our little
Oh,
tradition.
just don't put my picture in, because I don't want to bring donuts.
Put his picture in. Okay, is there any further discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on, and we'll put this on our next agenda because it was just on for initial proposal, and John, if you'll look into that information and as well as the quiet verbiage as well.
So that'll be pretty easy to do though, right, John? We'll have this in 2 weeks with the,
You should.
with the.
On my
version
end,
that-
yes. Well, I'll work with Mr. Mickle and talk to the attorney, Steve Barth, and
Okay, sounds good.
we'll
Thanks.
work toward that.
Okay, the next item is discussion on the clerk auditor's office personnel request. Jess Bradfield?
Guys, don't leave, this is the most exciting part. I want to keep this brief, council. In the interest of time, although this is important, at least to my office, I've met with most of you one-on-one. Currently, as you know, the situation is that we are down 2 part-times in my office. In 2020, these individuals were allocated 1,500 hours total between the two of them, but they worked 2,800 hours. And so more than 1,000 hours of additional time was required. That came to roughly $47,000, but they were only allocated $28,000. I'm requesting permission to combine these 2 part-time positions into 1 full-time position. This will require $0 in 2021. I can reallocate the funding that you've already given me to meet this requirement, and then I will require between $20,000 to $30,000 in all future years. Most of that is the difference in benefits and being a benefited position. It depends on how they make up their benefits package, and the things that they choose is what defines some of the cost structure around that. But there is a great need for my office to have more full-times. In 1981, we had 4 full-times. In 2021, over the years, we had a lot of people who would be full-time, and then they would drop to part-time, and then we never backfilled the full-times, is how it's kind of gone. And as you can see, my office is taking on more work. We want to continue to be able to take on more work, such as dog licenses, such as grandmas. But in order to accomplish that, we're already running 1,000 hours over the amount that we are given and budgeted for. And so we will be, requiring positions to make that happen. And in this case, I'd like to combine the 2 part-times for 1 full-time. I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Does anyone have any questions for Jess?
I do. I visited with you yesterday, Jess, and you have hired 2 new employees, correct?
Those would be temporary employees, seasonals.
Seasonals?
No, you've hired one that,
Yeah.
your assistant has been hired to replace one since we discussed it a month ago. Is that not correct?
Well, that's not a new position. That's just a backfill of an existing position. So as far as new positions, I don't have any new positions.
Right, but you have hired a new employee.
Correct.
Correct.
So from what I understand, there was an employee hired today, or you approved an employee today?
Correct.
And what is that for?
That is the one, if you recall, back in November, I believe we had it approved, or December. That's the individual who's backfilling Randy Gus, who is IT for our department.
Okay.
And so elections IT is essentially what that role is.
And are they full-time or part-time?
That's a full-time role, and Randy was full-time as well.
Okay. So I guess I'm kind of confused about how you're going to, and you've got it down here, but you cut back hours on a couple employees and then you want to hire more. I don't understand why the cutback and then you want to add more hours.
I actually never cut back any hours. I only have allocated hours for employees and then had them work their allocated hours.
Okay.
That's,
Well, the way I understood it, you explained it to me that the only employee you got there that was there after you won the election is just one employee. The rest of them have all, no, that's not true. There's two, but the one's in the auditor side. But as far as in the clerk side, there's only one.
two on the clerk side.
Yeah, well, that's right. But I mean, there's two on the clerk side that's still working for you that were there. Well, Diana was the only one there when I was in visiting with you. Who was missing?
Christy. I also have Christy working there as well.
Okay, she wasn't there the day I was in there.
Yeah, she comes in twice a week.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, these two part-time employees that you had, that they were actually contracted at 1,500 hours collectively, right?
Correct, yeah.
And then, but for some reason, they were bringing in overtime all the way to 2,809 hours.
Correct.
And did you find out why that was necessary to go over that many hours? Or if it was necessary? What did you find out?
When I came into the department, there were many family members working for my department, and many family members of various personnel quit. And that was related to various issues within the department. And so we had a lot of what I would call nepotism, and I had vocalized that I wanted to put an end to just hiring friends and family, and so a lot of people immediately quit when I came in, which required more hours from other personnel, which also left me short-staffed.
Just my question, those two part-time employees that work extra hours, were those extra hours just during the election season, or were they throughout the year?
No, so we actually have various hours that I would have had to have them work additionally this year as well. So we have redistricting coming up. We also have elections that we were going to start to run for the municipalities. And at this point, unless I have staff, I can't run the municipality elections. And if you've paid attention to the election laws, they are starting to require that if a city requests the county to run their elections, then we have to give them a bid. And that just advanced through the House last week.
That's current legislation working its way through right now, isn't it?
I'm caucusing, trying to get them to say that it's not a mandate, or at least give us a couple years to prepare for that, because there's no way that I have the staff to be able to pull that off year after year. And as I've said, since 1981, we've actually lost headcount instead of gained headcount. And so it will take us a little bit of time to be able to build up the bench strength to get to that point.
Well, if the municipalities want us to do their elections, then they need to pay for it. If that means we've got to hire somebody else, all of that cost should come from them. It should not have to come a dime from the county. That doesn't seem right to me, that we would have to bear that cost. It should come from whatever fee or contract you charge.
But doesn't the legislation currently say that they don't necessarily have to make you do it, so they're just, you put a bid, this is what it would cost, they could still go some other way? And if
No.
you got hired person, no, is it
The current legislation is very specific, and it says that we shall.
shall, okay.
And so I'm trying to get that to be, if they already contract, then it's a shall, for specifically ranked choice is what.
You hate to hire for just a few minutes, oh, yes, we have the contract, no, we don't, and then, year after year, that could really be.
Makes it difficult.
Oh, jeepers, that's a
Yeah,
fiasco.
the good news is that we will, the costs, like you're saying, would be offset in those situations. I don't want to get too far into the potential issues, because I really just need to focus on what my needs are at the moment. But potentially, the cost would be offset by the municipal elections. But you have to build that into your budget before the year begins typically, and you have to give estimates to the cities, and we are late to that game. And I will be honest with you, most counties in Utah are already at that point. We are behind the 8 ball when it comes to running elections for the municipalities.
On hiring this new person that you want, have we seen a description of the position? Or can we see that and see what exactly the responsibilities are for that?
Yeah, typically, council doesn't, I typically review that with the administrative side of the House rather than the legislative side of the House. But if council would like to have a job description.
We've viewed job descriptions
Yeah,
before,
we've
haven't
seen
we?
them before. Yeah, I think if we feel like we need to see that to see if we need to expend that money,
Yeah.
if the council
Well,
feels that
usually
way.
don't we just let, our,
Amy?
I was just gonna say, we have a list of duties that need to be completed that Jess and his chief deputy have completed. We can get you a copy of that if that would help you understand what the duties would be for this new position. And essentially, by taking those two part-time positions, we're able to combine those into one full-time position and move those things forward. And there's a number of things that are dictated by code that are currently lacking in the clerk's office. These would be part of that position's responsibilities. And so, but yeah, he's already completed and done the legwork to have a list of the duties. And if it takes a couple weeks, we can get that to you probably tonight. I think I have a copy in my office, and happy to make a copy, and so you can see what we're talking about with the long list of duties that total about 2,000 hours of additional work that's required. So,
Has there been any kind of market study done to see what the wage would be for that
I don't know that we have done any studies.
Finished it up today.
Okay, so do you want to come talk to that? Are there any specific questions you have for Amy?
Amy, what would the yearly wage be for this position?
So this position, the pay rate starts at $16.78 an hour. So, I'm a people person, not a math gal, sorry, but, times that by 2080 and that's what you get. So, but then you would also need to consider benefits on top of that, which there's a percentage that goes to URS, employer taxes, and depending on which tier of URS they're in, that could make a difference. And then also what type of benefits they choose and what the employer cost of that is.
Thank you.
I have one other question. By having one full-time employee, is that going to limit your scheduling to where you always have someone in that office at different times versus the two part-times, where you kind of be able to maybe schedule them back and forth? I'd limit it to one, and then two people get sick or on vacation, and we're still covering all the bases and the needs of the clerk's office.
That's correct. So at the current moment, in fact, actually having the part-times created a bigger issue. Because if they wanted to take vacation, I didn't really have necessarily backups because they were part-times. You're working And then if somebody else was already, so let's just say they got sick, somebody else was already on vacation, it's basically sixes because the other person wasn't planning on coming in. The other thing that we are working towards, just so everybody knows, is we have brought in seasonal workers. We're using seasonal workers for task-based projects, but we're also deputizing them to assist with the front counter. Our goal is to have people at the front counter at all times for better customer service and dedicated customer service, so that somebody doesn't come into my office and somebody's typing away and then looks up, and that's the secondary thing. What we want is somebody right at the front desk at all times, and so that we can meet that with
a smile.
With a smile, correct. And we can meet that first frontline expectation with a temporary worker, and they can also serve as our backup in a worst-case scenario.
So Jess, I'm sorry.
No, just thanks for that answer.
The seasonal employees, how long do you expect to keep them?
The maximum that we can keep them is, I think it's 1,040 hours or 6 months. And so, but we want to build relationships with the local community in the best way that we can do that. And that might be slightly off, but it's.
You were right, I would have corrected you.
Okay. But we want to build those relationships and give opportunities to the students. And we want people to be able to engage in local government. And having temporary employees is one way to do that. And it's been great. I haven't known any of them previously or prior to having them come into the office. It's brought a lot of diversity and fun discussions into the office, and they've brought in ideas that I never even thought of. You know, I've been trying to modernize the office, but some of them come in with even newer ideas than what I had, so it's been good.
James, I have a question for you on this item and item C as well. We have them on initial proposals for consideration of action, but they're really more of a kind of a heads up on a budget opening. Do we need to take action, or can we just say, let's do it in a budget opening, or what's the most appropriate?
It should be in a budget opening.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see the budget issue of it too, so, yeah.
Does Cameron need us to say, yeah, we want to see this in a budget opening?
Yeah, and there's one coming up.
March, I think.
Yeah, March, the first
I know Devron has got some things he
Devron
wants
has
to do,
some.
so if we're gonna do a budget opening, he ought to get his duck.
Yeah, we kind of need to look at them all.
Next meeting.
You're gonna see how well his presentation goes.
See how tough we are.
Hey, that's okay. I would ask council, we do have to start making preparations. As previously noted, we've had a lot of misses in the clerk's office previously of things that are required by statute and by law, and we haven't been able to fulfill those. And some of it was due to not having the amount of human capital that we needed in order to get everything done. And so if we are going to do it, I mean, if possible, I'd like kind of a directional, how you're feeling about it before the budget opening, because we do have to make plans according to, we are a month out perhaps of the budget opening, and we do have to kind of make plans according to if we would be, you know, according to the council's thoughts.
Well, my thought is I want to look at the whole budget before I make that decision, because coming in and making changes after we've approved a budget is actually a big deal. And I know that there's probably other departments that are wishing that they could be doing the same thing that you're doing, because they haven't been feeling efficient, or, you know, and so I want to kind of look at that before I go like this. It's important to me that I really take a good look at it.
I just have to be clear here. This is a $0 request for this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a legitimate request, but I think.
Obviously, the need is there.
Yeah, the need's there. I think we just need to get it all ready for next meeting, and, I mean, really good questions. I guess I went in and visited with Jess here a couple of weeks ago, and he shared with me his concerns and whatnot, and as I could see it, first of all, he had a need. He lost 2 employees that he needs, and so I think it's no-brainer that whether we hire two more part-time or full-time, I mean, but we still gotta hire somebody.
A full-time position does need to be approved by the council.
Yeah.
Obviously, if there's money in a budget that would cover it this year, it becomes a big budget issue for next year if it's going to be funded, but.
That's correct.
I'd still like to hear what Cameron has to say about it and see just exactly where the money's coming from for this full-time employee.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I did work with Cameron on this and notify him, and he said that this would not be an issue in years moving forward. But I think that's something that it would definitely make you feel more comfortable coming from him than me saying he said it, so.
And you're saying years coming forward, but what about this year?
$0. I would work within my budget to pay for this. What I'm saying is I have need of extreme makeover in my office. We've got about 2,000 to 3,000 hours of work that needs to be done that's currently undone, such as documenting 150 years of council minutes. And so this is a high need and a high priority for the office. But it would cost $0. We'd be willing to go without some things to be able to get this.
It isn't bad that we bring our offices into the 20th century.
Oh, but all of them want, to do it.
They all, yeah. And you know what? There is a need for a lot of them to do. You know, it's when we have the stacks of papers and just folders and binders that are not digitized and not readily available and not, stored in electronic format type of stuff. I just, it does flabbergast me that we have been so archaic on just letting things happen too long a certain way. We need to bring the technology of the world into it, but the thing is, like you say, we have to be able to afford it in the process.
Yeah, I'm thinking you might be able to pay this year, but how are we gonna pay for the following year? And how does that fit into future budgets for other departments wanting to move money around and stuff like that? I don't wanna have to see hire somebody and then, I wanna know where we're getting the money in the future.
And just as a reminder, my budget is actually higher this year than probably will be required in future years. My budget will probably go down in future years because at the end of last year, I'd come to you with the request of my budget to increase so that I could modernize the office. So this is all just part of the modernization process requested. And so I would think of it as, I know that it seems like I'm saying I need more money, but in fact, I will need less money next year than I'm currently using to modernize the office this year.
All right, any further discussion?
There really are very few things in that office that you should be able to, at home, click, 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 hit the button and just pop in there and raise your right hand and swear to something and be out of there. You should be able to click, click, go in there, pick up your dog license or print it off, whatever, pay right there, all that stuff. This is the real world. And if we can do that, and then we can have these people, our personnel, be doing the vital things that are bringing us up to statute.
Going along with that, one of the things that Jess shared with me, and I think he's 100% right, and that is there's a huge amount of documents that are 100, 120 years old that are just about to the point where they're not going to be able to look at very many more times. And they need to be copied, and they need it to be in a position where they are accessible on a computer plus preserved. Preserved is probably the best word to use, and that's something that he's identified and he's willing to put in the effort that it's going to take, and that'll be a massive job.
And I would just add to what he said. We'll get you the list of the tasks that he's asked to take on, and he's taking a few tasks away from other departments as well. He's taking on the grandma ordinance, and There's one other one that I.
Dog licenses?
Dog licenses, and he's,
Municipal elections
well,
in the future.
so there's several things that he's taking on and should potentially lighten the load of other departments as well through this process. And so I think that this is all part of this position. So I'll get you that list, if not tonight, then tomorrow morning. And I can send that out to all the council members so you can see what the anticipated workload of this position would likely be and how many hours associated with each of the tasks. So.
And I would like
Thank
to,
you.
I would like to make one more comment, and that is the stuff that our recorder shared with me when I was in there visiting with him. Let's get that all together so we can discuss that next week as well, because it's amazing how far behind they are in the recorder's office.
Okay.
So.
We'll get that. Okay. Thank you. Let's move on to discussion of the fire district funding request with Rod Hammer.
Paul's grinning here. Keep it coming. Yeah, so I emailed you all last week to kind of explain the background here. When we looked at the living quarters in the new ambulance station, new to us, the living area is pretty tight. It was roughly the size of the 10 by 4 or 10 by 40 trailer house that my wife and I lived in when we were newly married, which was okay because we didn't mind it being close quarters. But for 4 adults to live in the same area is getting a little bit tight. We were budgeted $110,000 to add on to that this year, and that was an estimate from the architects. They figured $150 to $160 a foot, and that's what we put in the budget. And after we got the bids, they were anywhere from $154,000 to $298,000 for a 600 square foot addition. And we had the same exact reaction when the bids started to come in. But I can't go forward with this without another $50,000. So when I talked to Cameron, we have ambulance fund reserve of roughly $800,000 through the Sims years that was built up. And then with the Sims dissolution, our portion of that's another $750,000. So we have roughly $1.6 million in ambulance fund reserve that's designated for that ambulance service. I'd like to use $50,000 of that fund to do this additional remodel. One of the issues, the timeline issues we have is trying to get a contract signed before they come back and say, well, yeah, that bid's out of date now, we're gonna have to rebid it, and that's obviously not gonna go down. So that's why I brought it in front of you tonight. So, questions you might have on that?
Any questions?
Does this have to go to the budget opening as well? It would.
Yeah, yep. It will need to go to the budget opening.
I think that's exactly what that money is basically to be used for, is those kind of accommodations to, to get make sure we get the same services north, south, got them all up and going and they're functioning good.
So, I mean, it has to go to the budget opening, right? But, I mean, this is a need, and if you want to be able to sign the contract.
Correct.
And nail it down, because if he doesn't, they're probably trying to renegotiate the contract now to go up even more. So I think, does anybody see any concerns when this comes up for the budget opening?
I don't know.
I don't either.
But I don't think legally you can bind yourself until you got approval. That's the challenge.
Yeah, we've got to take it to the budget opening.
Well,
Go get some more bids and tell them that they got to hold it for 2 weeks.
every bid that I had come in kept coming higher and higher.
You haven't built a house lately, have you?
No, not like that.
Every 10 minutes it changes.
I just remodeled my basement. It couldn't get done fast enough. Kept going up every time they showed up. Oh, here's an extra.
Yeah.
I guess what you should do, and go ask them if they'll honor their bid for 2 more weeks, and off we go.
Okay. I'll talk.
It's positive.
I'll talk to the contractor.
Yeah, it sounds like it's positive, but you do.
Outside of a signature, then I'll just say we brought it before the council. They're favorable. Can you just hold the bid price for another couple weeks without committing to them?
We're giving you all a thumbs up at your risk.
That's why we sent you to become a doctor, so you could really negotiate.
Yeah, it's worked out well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is consideration of approval, the 2020 tax relief report. So this is a report that was compiled by our deputy auditor, Diana, and it's just a summary of the tax relief from last year, and it just needs approval of the council.
I had an opportunity to review that. I didn't see anything that was concerning, and I'd move that we approve it.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2020 tax relief report. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Hey, motion passes.
A lot of pent-up motion.
You are a man of emotion.
Okay, council members, 2021 board and department assignments, and I spoke with each of you, and it appears that you all want to keep the assignments that you have. And so, Nolan, that means that you'll get to take on John White's assignments. The only change that we had was that Barbara resigned from the homeless task force, and I've asked Carl Ward if he would be willing to take that on.
I'd make a good homeless.
And he said he would.
I'd be glad to.
Thank you, Carl.
So that's the only change that we have. And also, everybody was happy with their department assignments, which is good. And so we'll just keep that the same as well. So those are the only changes.
I think we get to keep the ballpark.
Yeah, so with that, we will move to council member reports. And as you give your report,
Get to speak on the 18th.
as you give your report, if you would please also mention what your goals are for 2021. And so David Erickson, I'm going to start down your way.
Okay, my number one goal is to kill COVID. And the fear of COVID. So we can get this economy going. We need to start speaking a little more positive about some things and just kind of put the thing in the rearview mirror and let's push the gas pedal on some things and get going. I've got a couple things. My goals was we're in the process of getting the drainage districts up north basically fully organized and fully functioning correctly. We have LeGrand Bitter Special Districts. He's coming up on March 10th. We accomplished one of those that's got it a full board last year, and now the others are coming on board. And they want to be trained now. So LeGrand Bitter's coming up on March 10th to meet with all of them up in the Lewiston City. So they can actually spend the taxpayers' money legally now. It's so cool. So
that's always good.
Well, there's lack of some oversight and some things and time, and we're getting these back up and going like they should. So that's one goal there. And I want to rally with Councilman Zillis, see if we can get the Davenport Road settled, get that thing just taken care of. The other goal I had was emergency disaster update training if we can. I think we've got enough turnover on our council here that we probably ought to meet again, maybe down with the sheriffs down there and just go through a training with everybody to say, hey, this is what you do when the world falls completely apart.
I was really interested that we had this big COVID terrible situation. We never even made it down to that center to discuss it.
But we probably ought to, don't you think? I think we probably got enough turnover and everyone. It's good for refresher as to this is what happens in an earthquake. This is how we do it, protocol and everything. We're probably due for that. I want to do a couple ride-alongs with the county deputies. That's actually downright fun.
Yeah, Dave, we've actually got a training that Will has has obtained a federal grant for in September that's going to be an actual emergency management type of deal. And so just wanted to alert you that you're right on with that, and we'll be inviting the council members to that as well.
I've just been alerted.
So we should know what we're doing ahead of that training in September.
It'll be real simulated emergencies, and so they'll go through the process. First, we'll have training to discuss what happens with each item and who's going to be in charge and what each person's role and responsibilities are, and then we'll have an actual emergency training where we'll pretend that it's actually happening. So, oh, we lost our communications, now what do we do, kind of thing, so.
Thanks, Bryce.
Okay. I'd like to spend some time in jail down there and just, see down there at the jail with the deputies.
Do you want to get right in with them and spend
Well,
the night?
I think that would be this is personal. I just want to go in there and say, hey, this is how the jail functions and that, and spend a couple hours in there and see if kind of a tour or something like that would be really good. And then the policies, some of this has been alluded to already. I want to fine tune the policies with the fire EMS on the monies for the ambulance funds, all that, just so that we have a flow through, how the money comes in, how it's going to be dispersed, and so we have something we can answer to all of the cities with. I think that's a big one. And then the improvements down at the fairgrounds is huge, and then solidify the general plan. That's the only things I want to do.
Quite
and
a
I'm
short
going to go
list.
home. So,
Don't get
Thank you.
bored.
yeah.
That's a big order. Okay, thank you. Gordy?
I've been thinking a lot about some of the things that we do at the Development Services. And they've done so many things through the past 4 years, 5 years. But one thing that I'd like to resurrect, and I'll get with Chris and his team, I'd really like to get some wording together and some thought put forth so that we have the cluster development option in our county tool chest in order for development. There's really some good ideas with that, but it's kind of fell by the wayside. But that option could be used in many places for some development out in the county that I think would lessen the amount of lots that could be built on. So I'm going to spend some time with Chris, and Chris, if you could start to pull out the minutes and the thoughts of what we had years ago on that. Let's get together with Joel and with Matt and see what we can come up with for that. And I also, I've been on Davenport Road for a lot of years, and I was a little discouraged when John presented that we're going to go back to where we were, 4 or 5 years ago and try to do it through litigation. Boy, that's discouraging, and I hope that we'll go ahead and do it that way, but it seemed to me like there's a lot of time still before we can go to court. What do you estimate? Maybe I shouldn't be asking that question in an open meeting, but.
Yeah, I think things are different with civil rules.
Things have changed enough that it'll be.
And it's a priority of the council, we know that. It'd be nice to be able to resolve it short of court, right? And sitting down. I don't know if that's possible with the other side, but we know where you're coming from. And
I see my one assignment's with the attorney's office, so I'll be a regular. I've stayed away this year because I knew you was going to give me COVID and I didn't want it, so. Pretty soon I'll have my vaccine and then I'll be right in there to see you.
And we've been vaccinated, so
I
you're
know.
welcome to come up.
Yeah. Okay, that's all.
Great, thanks, Gordy. Carl?
It's just nice to be back. And it's good to be with you all. Really, I don't have anything to report other than I guess this year I'm serving as the chair of the governing board of Bragg, so I'll be involved quite a bit with what's going on with Bragg this year. As far as goals are concerned, I echoed these two individuals. The Davenport Road thing, we've got to get that thing settled. I'd like to stop having a weekly phone call from a certain individual that I get every week, see where we're at, and try to get this thing finished up. Also, I was very, very pleased when we passed a budget for 2021 without having to have a truth in taxation hearing. And I would like to continue that direction. We're fortunate because we have had a record year in sales tax revenues, and that's helping us. And I hope we can continue to move forward and be fiscally responsible and continue to not have to go through truth and taxation when we do our budget each year, but still maintain sufficient reserves to take care of our needs. And then finally, I just want to work with, as I represent District 1 in Logan City, I want to work to maintain good relationships with our city government here.
Is that everything, Carl?
Yep, that's all. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carl, it's been a lot of years since we've met with Logan City, hasn't it? A full year.
It has.
Yeah. We could set up a meeting once COVID's over. Barbara?
Nothing to report on the departments. Now that I know for sure that I'm staying where I'm at as far as my boards, I've already talked to a couple of them. I want to set up quarterly meetings with them, at least quarterly, so I can keep ahead of the game or be able to be informed as to what they need or what I can help them with. And I want to be more involved with the budgetary concerns. And I have a lot to learn, but I always started the last couple days visiting with Cameron, and I just think there's some things that I'm a little concerned about as far as some of these requests, and I just want to stay on top of that. And I'd like to get to know more about zoning and planning and, work more with Chris that way. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Barbara. Paul?
Okay, as far as goals, I had the same one as Dave. I want to do a ride-along, so maybe I could just ride in the back seat and take me to jail and see how it all works. That'll be good. I'll get
They have bracelets for that.
Yeah, I'll get the customer review.
And then along with Gordy, Chris, we'll come see you. I think what I'd love to do, y'all are doing such good work on the general plan.
But we've had a few things here in front of us where we want to be able to do some things instead of say, let's wait for 2 years. So it really could be, how can we work some things that are on the horizon but need to be done today, and how we can help you do that. And then the third thing, as far as boards and committees, and Janine will probably seize up at this one, is how can we improve the public relations and get some of the messages that we have out there to the community better. I think we can just take stock of that a little more. So those are the three things I have.
Thanks, Paul. Nolan?
Well, I'm so new, I'll just be happy if I know which and where the meetings are that I'm supposed to be, so.
It takes 2 years.
I just looked at this yesterday and I'm like, flip, I have no idea, so. No, part of I sat last week on planning and zoning. Those guys put a lot of time in. That was a 4-hour meeting last week, and there was 55 or 58 people, wasn't it? 60 on Zoom. That's just quagmire. So if we're going to keep doing that, I'd almost like to see if we're getting new iPads, that these iPads go to those guys on the planning and zoning. We're asking a lot of them because they don't have any technology of their own. I mean, they're using their own. So, and of course, we all expect COVID to get done and out of here, but who knows? We'll have to see how that goes. So I have 4 communities in my district. I want to make sure that I'm working and listening to those communities, Mendon, Hiram, Wellsville, and Paradise, so that we're coordinating and listening, and they know what we as a county is doing, and we know what they as a community is doing. And my other goal is to listen to the constituents who elected me, is to somehow find out, you know, how I can help them or be of service to them in those areas too. Obviously, I'll serve on these boards, but I don't know. I really want to know that the citizens feel like that they have a voice, or that we're hearing, or that we're listening and doing that. I know that, you know, it's like, I think all of us saw so many responses to the winery thing, and I thought that was great. But I'd like to see more of that happening, and I don't know how you do that. I mean, the development services, when we sat on planning and zoning, a lot of times we'd hear, hey, I didn't know that. I've talked with some people who say, hey, posting in the newspaper, whatever, isn't enough, but you know, you just got to learn to get on there. So I hope that I can get up to speed and be of service like you guys are.
Nolan, thank you. And I want to say, where you might feel a deer in the headlights, I really appreciate your expertise on planning issues. We were in a meeting, you and I, the other day, talking to somebody, and your expertise came in very handy. You know a lot of things that some of the rest of us don't have that experience. So I appreciate that, and just wanted you to know that. So the goals I have, okay, I already met one of my goals, and that was to break the meeting records, and I broke the longest and the shortest. The first 2 times I was the chair, so cross those off. One is, of course, kind of the Hall of Shame with the long meeting, but anyway. Oh, before I go on, I forgot to mention that the masks were provided by USU Extension. And they're very comfortable, is what I was told. So just wanted to pass that on. Goals that I have are, I really want to see our county successfully complete our, I call it a master plan. I forgot what we're calling it, but I think that that's really key to moving forward in a lot of things that we do on the council. And I appreciate so much the work that has gone into it so far. And I want to see us be able to come up with something good with good input, and I'm excited about that. My second goal is kind of similar to something that you said, David. I want to make sure that we are efficiently operating all our offices. I've appreciated, and Jess isn't here to hear this, but our recorder is, and I've appreciated how they've taken a fresh look at how things are or aren't working, and I'd really like all our departments to do that, see where we can make changes to really serve the people of this county. And I know that that's what a lot of them want to do, and sometimes I think budgeting and space has been an issue, and so I would really like to know what those needs are and how we can meet them in budget as a council. And that being said, I also agree with Carl in doing all these things on our list, but keeping taxes low and being really mindful of the widow's mite and not putting burdens on our people. And not to put too fine a point on the Davenport Road issue, but yes, that's on my list too. Let's get that done and out of the way. And I had another goal. I wanted to create a crisis council to help kind of make sure that all the different parts that work in crisis know what each other's doing. But it sounds like the family place already has such a thing with the CR2, is that what it's called?
RC squared.
Yeah, crisis squared, yeah.
RC squared.
RC squared, that's what it was. I got the letters backwards. So I won't be doing that, but I see a need for that, just to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page there. So those were my goals. So is there anything else?
I had an email from a resident of Millville who told me that down at the COVID vaccination things, that when they have extra vaccines left over at the end of the day with all the people that were supposed to come in to be vaccinated, and then they start to look for people that they can use those doses on so that they don't waste them, which I think is absolutely a good thing. But his suggestion was if we do have doses almost every day that are not being used, that he wanted to be set up that you could make an appointment as an alternate and go down and take your chances rather than just going down there and standing in line, which is virtually the same thing, but he thought that it would be better if it was a little more organized and it was people that wanted to get in on an appointment to do it. Has anyone else had anybody make mention that that's what's taking place down there?
There are, so the Board of Health, we're seeing more and more vaccinations. We're very optimistic that the over 70 group will be done here first part of next month, and compromised folks next month, 65 and over. We're starting to see, I haven't known that to be done with the vaccinations coming through the health department, but Walgreens, I know Smith's will be getting doses, and our Sam's Club, 1 and then 200 a week. So there will be doses coming through private businesses. Walgreens, I know that I had a friend that went there last week. He and his wife and his 17-year-old son got their first vaccination. So private businesses, as you see them, they're incentivized by getting those out to folks because they can charge insurance companies for them. So you'll see a broader spectrum of, that's the good news. So your goal is going to be met, and the other Davenport.
Well, the question is how does the general public know that these things are actually taking place and get a fair shot at it? That's what his concern was.
So the health department is rolling according to the governor's directives, which is 70 plus, and then it will be 65 and compromised. Our school teachers have it, obviously. And then it will be opened up, continue to open up from there once we get those populations done. Private businesses, obviously.
They can do what they want, you think?
Well, we had two younger folks and a teenager that was vaccinated, and you have to be careful. Pfizer, I think it's Pfizer, Moderna, you have to be over 16. But businesses will know that. But there's incentives. The incentives are lined up, and businesses will start rolling these out. There are 2 more coming online, 2 more vaccinations, which we believe will be one shot. Johnson & Johnson, and another one very similar to it. So that's the good news, is that we'll be able to. And the other good news is we're down to 73%. Our ICU beds have just plummeted. That we're treating this well, and we're not occupying 90+% of our ICU beds where we were at, a month ago. So there's a lot of good news on the horizon. But as far as the health department, people can go there. There's good information. We'll be in a Board of Health meeting tomorrow.
Maybe you guys could bring that up, because that is a really good idea to have an alternate, so maybe.
Well, you can have an alternate
then,
slot, and then if
yeah.
you've got the time to go in there and stand around till the end of the day, and you did have one of the alternate tags that way. He just felt that it wasn't fair that he was here and the other people were getting the vaccine because they happened to be down there, and he must have wanted to get it.
I think that's how Walgreens is doing it. You walk in and it's like, hey, do you want a shot? Type thing. I know that they want to avoid congregating people, so the appointments are kind of a precaution that you bring people in and you get your shot right on time, and so but we'll pass that along tomorrow, and get information out to the public who may be wondering those same questions, because Smith's is online. There's one other Smith's, Sam's Club, and there's one other store that will be coming online and getting hundreds of vaccinations a week, so that's good news.
Aren't they also reevaluating how they look at the numbers? I think Governor Cox has come out and says, hey, how many tests were given and how many positives are there? We're finally starting to see, I think that's a better correlation than just number of positives.
The positive rate is going down too.
Well, but if you're still giving 10,000 tests and the positives are going down, I think they call it herd immunity.
I'm concerned that Janine is patting the numbers down. When I looked at it, there wasn't hardly anybody on it, and I just wonder if she's finally
she nodded her head, yes.
learned how to do it.
See, she did again.
Yeah. All right, well, we've gone kind of longer, so we shall adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. People have lots to say tonight.
Thank you.
They say where I'm from, that's the eclipse of Krishna. There you go.